James chapter 3. James is so practical. He does a good job. Speaking of decorating for Christmas, I was thinking we could put up the nativity maybe next Sunday after service. So if we need a hammer or something, maybe we can get that. I think it's in good repair. Maybe we can kind of check that out this week. We can put up our nativity for the Christmas season if the wind has stopped blowing us away. And also giving some thought on Christmas this year is on Sunday morning, so that makes Christmas Eve Saturday night. And I'll do a Christmas candlelight Saturday night and then come back the next morning if y'all promise to be here. So y'all be considering how you'll do on a candlelight service, and we will schedule accordingly to what the crowd will support and wants to do. So, James chapter 3. Today we're going to be talking of the tongue. The title I just titled the sermon, "The Tongue is a Powerful Tool." James 3, let's read verses 1 through 12. "My brethren, be not many masters, knowing that we shall receive the greater condemnation. For in many things we offend all. If any man offend not in word, the same is a perfect man, and able also to bridle the whole body. Behold, we put bits in the horses' mouths, that they may obey us, and we turn about their whole body. Behold also the ships, which though they be so great, and are driven of fierce winds, yet are they turned about with a very small helm, whithersoever the governor listeth. Even so the tongue is a little member, and boasts great things. Behold how great a matter a little fire kindleth. And the tongue is a fire, a world of iniquity. So is the tongue amongst our members, that it defiles the whole body, and sets on fire the course of nature, and it is set on fire of hell. For every kind of beast, and of birds, and of serpents, and of things in the sea is tamed, and hath been tamed of mankind. But the tongue can no man tame. It is an unruly evil, full of deadly poison. Therewith blessed be God, even the Father. And therewith curse we men, which are made after the similitude of God. Out of the same mouth proceeds blessing and cursing. My brethren, these things ought not be so. Ought not so to be. Doth a fountain send forth at the same place sweet water and bitter? Can a fig tree, my brethren, bear olive berries? Either a vine, figs? So can no fountain both yield salt water and fresh." A couple of things you can just look at this kind of before we get to the heart of it and the depth of it. Here, like verse 1, it says, because not everybody just gets into the scripture and just understands it, or even is able to try to get the meaning from certain verses, and it's good to go back and look at some things, and you dissect the verse, just like verse 1. If you get off to a bad start, you kind of get lost for the whole passage. So some people, they'll hear, "My brethren, be not many masters, knowing that we shall receive the greater condemnation." What does that mean? There's a lot of people look at that, and you lose them before you even start, and that's simple. And that actually, almost a real action, what I would say, as far as translating the Greek here, a better word to translate masters to, and other versions do it, and other verses in King James will do it, is to teachers. And my brethren, be not many teachers, knowing that we shall receive the greater condemnation. What does that mean? It says you got to be careful if you're choosing to do what I do, to teach. You are going to be held accountable. You will be held accountable. Don't be a teacher unless you're ready to be held accountable. And I think there's a lot of people so very quick, and it can be a good thing, but it also can be a dangerous thing. They just they want to do something, so we'll start a Bible study. Go for it, but you better be right, because when you put yourself in a position as a teacher, you will be held accountable for that which you teach. And if you cause somebody to stumble and fall, to falter away, that's on you. And God will hold you accountable for it. So be a teacher. Start a Bible study. Do what you would, but just understand you're going to be held accountable. It's not just you can have the enjoyment of doing it and feel good, but you better stick to it. I'm amazed at how we just, somebody saying they're going to do something, they get the credit for having done it. We celebrate marriages like they're awesome on the wedding day. 5 years later, it's divorces, they've been divorced. And that's a sad deal. That's that's all of our society. We celebrate anytime somebody says they're going to do something, it's like it's great. People saying, I'm going to go to college. Well, good, that's great. And we cheer them on just because they say they're going to go to college. Or they actually go and then they drop out. I want a refund. Anytime I give somebody an attaboy for doing something, if they don't finish through, I want a refund on my attaboys, I know people who's accumulated, they have their open house after the high school, $500,000, $2,000, going to go to college, 1 semester of college, then they drop out. They ought to refund all that, the people giving them stuff. Because you're investing in that person and they ought to see it through. Here's what I ought to start doing. You want me to marry you, you're going to put into an escrow about $20,000 in escrow. And you stay married for 10 years, you can have that money. That's what I ought to do. But if you get divorced before 10 years, that's my money. I'll do the wedding for free, but you better stick with it. You're going to waste my time to ask God's blessing on your marriage and you're going to get a divorce? I don't think so. That put a stop to some of these people who just get credit for doing something. Saying that they're going to do it without doing it. You know how many... It happens, you see it in the farming world or small business. I'm this, I'm that. Well, prove it. Stick to it. And we've lost stick-to-itiveness. And you have people that are teaching Bible studies, and they start the Bible studies and they don't see it through. Or they start the Bible studies for wrong reasons, and they want to be a teacher. And they get the glory of being a teacher. But you better be careful. You get held accountable for being a teacher. There's repercussions if you do it wrong. My brethren, be not many masters, knowing that we shall receive the greater condemnation. Doing stuff for the wrong reason is inappropriate. You know how many of my peers, the good Christians, when I was 18, went to a Christian college, and again, pat on the back. Oh, you've done great. You know how many of them graduated? 0. I don't know that any of them actually graduated. But they go there looking for a spouse. It's a social connection. You know how many Bible studies are started in churches nowadays for a social connection? Just so people get to know each other because they can't come to church. They're so big, or because they don't care, they're pouty. Y'all are happy in here. And y'all almost too happy. But y'all are happy in here of a morning. And that's good. And some churches don't have that. And they have to make people go to each other's houses to love each other. And they call it a Bible study. That ain't a Bible study. That's a social connection. You better be careful because you're going to be held accountable for it. I've seen Bible studies that turn into people pushing small business essential oils. Go to Jane Doe's house for a Bible study, and she's trying to make you buy Tupperware. And it's been known to happen. He's just saying, if you want to be a teacher, that's fine. But you better take it seriously. For in many things we offend all. If any man offend not in word, the same is a perfect man, and able also to bridle the whole body. Well, I don't know how many of y'all can say that. I certainly can. I stumble over my words. I could hurt feelings in no time. I can accuse Joe of having a Christmas tree up already. She does it. She does it. Let me be clear. And she has it, But it wasn't like it was a bad thing, but you say stuff, you don't mean it in a bad way, but somebody could have hurt feelings. And there could be a division created just because you run your mouth too much. And we've all done it. That's just a very, very simple one. I know Joe isn't going to leave here stomping out mad. I'm just saying, things can be said that will offend, and nobody's going to be perfect. You can offend people, and it's going to happen. Nobody's perfect. Why? Because words. Because of tongue. Be careful when you teach. You will be held accountable. Be careful when you teach. You're going to stumble, trip over your own words. You maybe hurt people's feelings, but you better be aware of it and careful. No one's perfect. No one's perfect. We're not saying you have to be perfect, and that's the point of verse 2. Nobody's saying that you have to be perfect. But you need to care about your words. Verse 4, I think something to note in verse 4. You see, behold also the ships, which though they be so great, and are driven of fierce winds, yet they are turned about with a very small helm. What's a helm? A rudder. A helm, actually I think technically the helm might be that which controls the rudder, but you get the idea. Whithersoever the governor, that's the captain, whoever's guiding it, the driver, listeth, wants to. Wherever he turns this way, it goes that way, and this way, and that way. So here's a thing I want to set up before we get started on the tongue, because a lot of sermons go this way. And the basic conclusion to their sermon is, so just shut up, period. I mean, that's the way most of them say, your tongue is dangerous, don't talk. And some people probably could hear that. I think I'll make that point to a certain extent here. But I don't think that's the idea that you ought to take away. You have a ship out here, and yeah, that somebody could take that ship, and you could turn it into the reef. Destroy the reef, destroy the ship. So what are you going to do? Cut the rudder off then? That's what? No! You need the rudder to steer the ship correctly. You don't cut it off. I'm not telling you to cut your tongue down. I'm telling you control it. And use it correctly. That's the point of the passage. The point of the passage is not for you to stop saying anything. It's for you to say the right stuff. I'm now giving away the whole sermon, and there's no suspense left. But no, that's seriously the point. You don't cut the rudder off. That's not the proper logic. Verse 4 says, a mighty ship is steered by such a small rudder. We have such a mighty, powerful mind and body that is, the tone is set by what we say and how we say it, our tongues. Tremendous part of verse 4 is that a rudder can lead a ship to safety. It can guide products to a place it ought to be. Or it can guide the ship to destruction, or to attempt to destroy others. And it's just amazing that a little small rudder on a ship steers it. Such is the tongue. Your words will make you or break you. There's always a story, and I'm not going to go through the entire illustration, but NASA's had some major billion-dollar failures. All because of like a 10-cent O-ring. And it happens. I've had some costly repairs because we got to get in and little bitty 2-cent O-ring. Such is your body. Then we see here, verse 5. Even so, the tongue is a little member, boasts great things. Behold, how great a matter a little fire kindleth. Fire is an excellent illustration for the tongue. Fire has caused such a great destruction. It can, but if you really ponder it, every fire starts out little. And I think you could say every fire starts out just the glowing ember. I'll tease one of my children. Apparently, my daughter Emma has a survival pocket knife, and it's got one of these little steel and magnesium fire starters, and you just scrape some magnesium, then you just hit a spark and woof. Well, apparently I came upstairs and it smelled like stuff is on fire. Well, she had scraped some and woof, I think lit some paper on fire or something, and it was just small, but you get an understanding of how great a fire a little spark can kindle, Marriages have been destroyed by the tongue and words used. And every fire that does the destruction usually starts as a little ember. You know, it wasn't this past year, I think it was last year, that real huge California wildfire. You know how it was started? Somebody out there had a little tiny pyrotechnic thing that they set off or shot or something, and a gender reveal. That's the thing now. Gender reveals. Find out what your baby is, and then you have a surprise for the parents, and it's either going to turn blue or turn pink. And they were revealing to their family the gender of their baby. Then they set the forest on fire behind their house, and away it went and burns up millions of acres. One little gender reveal thing. You know how many millions of acres have been burned because people flipped their cigarettes out the car? That's not even on, like, fire. Only takes a little spark, a little ember. I'm sure you have your own story of what it can do, but from my notes, I'll catch up here. I said marriages have been destroyed by the tongue and words used. Most marriages are not destroyed by big issues. You show me a marriage having a fight over a big issue, and oftentimes a couple will recount something from the last week or the last month, but many times that's just a culmination building over the last 6 months, over the last year. And it isn't just something that might be said, it's like an infidelity. This is an illustration of how a little thing can turn into a big fire. It could be infidelity, it could be money, it could be communication, it could be disrespect, whatever. But just to show you how a little ember, a little spark, can a great fire kindle. You know, most fights that are big and need to be addressed and they come to a head were probably once little embers that could have been put out with great ease. So in my example of marital conflict, you know, you might say last week's huge fight probably started out months before with some little jab, something passive-aggressive, a disrespect that occurred. A little spark landed on some flammable material and it just laid there smoldering until a breath of wind came and woof, away it goes. And that's what happens. It can just sit for a long time glowing, and then a little breeze kicks it up and it's a big fire, and you look and you try to address the big fire and you put it out. But what really needs to be addressed is what started it, and the little ember weeks ago or months ago or even years ago. Not to try to hold accountable for it, but to prevent it from happening again. Not to second guess what could have been, but to do better in the future to the glory of God. Point is every little fire, every big fire started out as a little fire. And it really does. Like I say, one cigarette butt out of a window can burn millions of acres in California. So much easier to put it out when it's little than when it's big. I got to a neighbor's house that was catching on fire. When I got there, it was a pretty good fire going up the side of the garage and get around and get the old lady out of the house. She's in there taking a nap, and by the time you come back around with the old lady, she's oblivious. The whole top of the garage is on fire and moving through the house in 5 minutes. But if the right person, even 30 seconds earlier with a bucket of water, could have prevented it all. Could have prevented it all. Isn't that the way it is? So, extinguish a fire as small as you can. It's way better than when it gets huge. Words can do that. The tongue can start a fire, for good or for bad. The tongue. I have a little bit more of a proper structured outline today. It's pretty simple, but my first point would be it is a powerful tool for evil. As a sub-point to that would be it can destroy. I think we've established that. It can start a fire that goes out of control. But that's a good first point to make. So sometimes people get stuck on that point, and that's all that they have to say about the tongue, and you could, I guess, harp on it for an hour. Just a generic, don't say bad stuff sermon. But I think there's much more to that, because a second point to that, second sub-point might be, it can build up the wrong things. Selfishness, arrogance, bragging on ourselves, As bad as tearing others down or hurting others to no avail is to build yourself up or to build up evil. It boggles my mind how some people can think that they are so right. And so they think that since they are so right, they have a right to tear into someone else. And out of pride and arrogance, they tear into other people. I pity those people. Really. People that really have no business correcting other people. Tearing other people down so that they feel them better themselves. Bragging on themselves out of selfishness. They don't even understand it. That goes back, and that's an understanding and a lesson point taught. Jesus taught in the Sermon on the Mount. It's people with beams in their eyes trying to dig the splinters out of other people's eyes. And they do it in hurtful ways. Tearing people down and building them to build themselves up. I guess I have a little bit of a rabbit trail, but boy, there's sometimes I'd like to say to some people, how dare you correct someone else? You're the one in the most need of tiptoeing around. And I know we all know these types of people. You take offense and you can't ever be corrected, and you think it's your job to correct other people. We know there's people like that. I want to ask them, have you ever considered once, for any amount of time, that you're the one that needs to be corrected? I don't usually say that to them, because that would be unnecessarily hurtful, but boy, I feel like it. People who use their tongues to scorn others. I find that people who are eager to correct others, many times are in the most need of correction themselves. I find that many times if I unnecessarily correct people, I quickly find ways I need to be corrected. There's a lot of people who are so good at correcting others and they find no fault in themselves ever. And I pity people like that because everybody knows how they are and they patronize them and nobody takes them seriously. And the hurt that they cause is best treated by reminding the people that nobody takes them seriously and they don't know what they're talking about. And don't ever become one of those people that just lets your tongue get away from you. If no one would ever take me serious when I found some fault in people, I mean, if people just stopped taking me serious and ignoring what I had to say, I probably would eventually shut up. Take a hint and just kind of shut up. Some people don't ever take that hint. So here's what I'd say. Maybe start trying to build other people up instead of tearing other people down. How about that? We're trying to build, tearing other people down and trying to build yourself up because you think you're right all the time. So I always, here's an exercise you can do. Go back and review yourself over this last week. I told you 2 weeks ago we were going to be talking about pride and then the tongue, and most of you probably forgot what we were going to be talking about today, so you probably couldn't put in an extra good week. So your last week is a good example. How much correction did you offer to others? Criticism or unnecessary cynicism? And who did you criticize and correct? How much building up did you do? Or did you just do tearing down? And not the fake kind of building up. You know what I mean? You go up to a person and say, well, you did real good at this, but, and you think offering a compliment somehow gives you a right then to scold them. And that's fake. I mean, when it was done in Revelation, and he goes in and he tells the churches, you did do this good, but you need to correct this. Now that's a good way to do things, but we've learned to speak Christianese nowadays to where we know as bosses and HR representatives, as people that if you flatter somebody first, then you can say whatever you want to them. And that's the no-go, unless it's true, sincere, in-depth, building somebody up. So that you can point out their flaws, that you can further build them up. Not just to criticize and tear them down. So you can be right. And today is not about building people up, it's about being right. And if you're only wanting to be right, you're doing it wrong. So So go back this week and see how many people you built up. And then see how many people you tore down. Maybe evaluate if you even had a right to tear that person down or insult that person. You don't get to tear them down just because you give them a compliment first. How dare people, especially within the Christian community and those that are brethren in Christ, without first caring deeply for that person, tear the person down. If you are not correcting out of love, you can shut up. I don't care if you do that within the Christian community, within our church, within your family, within whatever. If you can't correct out of love, just shut up. Amongst children, siblings, families, churches, governments, Facebooks, neighbors, whatever. Unless you have some explicit authority to hold accountable for, if you can't do it out of love, shut up. If you would take offense if somebody else told you something the way you tell them, then you need to shut up. You're not doing it right. It boggles my mind how many people would not dare take what they dish out. They want to badmouth person. They want to say whatever. But if you could take a recording of what they said, wait 2 hours and play it back to them, and they'd hit the ceiling, that person is doing it wrong. I find a lot of people cannot take what they want other people to take. You're out of line. You ought to shut up. You ain't got a right to talk. That's the way it is. If you're not willing to be talked to the same way you talk to others, you might want to really consider how and what and when and why you're talking. And this is going to, and this is not, apply it to yourselves. Because every single one of us could look around in our own lives, maybe even in the church, and say, yeah, boy, I hope that person's listening. I'm going to get a copy of this, and I'm going to make this person listen to it. And this is going to be Christmas presents for my whole family. Out of 50 DVDs, bulk. Give me that YouTube link. You're going to have 2,000 views by the time I get done sharing this. Now, this ain't for you to share with other people. Okay, if God is having you hear this is because He wants you to hear it. Not because He wants you to go share this with somebody else. You can hear what I have to say. Maybe God wants you to hear it. Watch what you're saying. Or God can knock you upside the head. But anyways, if everyone else is always wrong and you never are, there's a good chance you're probably the wrongest of all. And maybe you need to take a good chance, a good opportunity to be quiet. If you have conflict with everyone else in your life, then you need to consider that it's not everyone else that is always at fault. Maybe everybody in your life is wrong and you're the only one that's ever right. Maybe that's a possibility. You just need to take back and make sure that you're right every once in a while. So I kind of said, if you might have to deal with someone who's always sharp-tongued and dull-witted, that's constantly cutting you with their tongue. And I pity you if that's what you have to deal with. But it's recommended I would recommend you stand back and let God knock them upside the head. There's no point in you trying to return sharp-tongued cuts with sharp-tongued cuts. You know what a defibrillator is? See how the churches have AEDs. That's the defibrillators. Well, it's the shock thing. And I sat at the hospital's auctioning off all of their stuff. It goes off this afternoon. So the old hospital, and you can actually go and buy a defibrillator. You can. There's a lot of stuff you can buy on that auction. I mean, you can buy stuff from the morgue, I think that's pretty creepy. You can buy all kinds of stuff, and one of the things you can buy is a defibrillator. And I thought, have a defibrillator, but you know how they take it and they charge him to whatever, and then they put them here and clear, and they try to shock somebody back in rhythm, right? That's a defibrillator, and I think that's a great illustration. You know how they always yell clear, and they make sure no one else is around touching the dead person, trying to be shocked back into rhythm. And I feel that's the way we ought to deal with mouthy people sometimes. Maybe whether it be mouthy children or whatever, whoever in the life, sometimes, and as children, I think you ought to have a parenting, but mouthy whatever, bosses or spouses or neighbors or whatever, sometimes you just have to yell clear, because I think God's about to shock that dying person back into rhythm, and you don't want to be touching them, because then it's going to be coming back on you. Sometimes I think you just need to yell clear and stand back and let God electrocute them. Give them something shocking. Shock them back into rhythm. I gave a sermon once where I said that there are some people that you could think this way towards, that if the church is a body, I think this is a little bit crude, but they'd be the butt, And there's people, and I've been in churches where that's where I've thought. I feel bad thinking that. But I'm imperfect, and I've been young and frisky, and I thought, well, the humans, if the church is a body, that's the butt. Why? Because there's crap always coming out of them. And that's what it is. And you don't want that to be thought about you, because there's always crap coming out of you. If this church was a body, you don't want to be the butt. I can say that because I hope nobody's devolved into that. I don't think anybody here is that way, but you better not ever get to that point, because you can find yourself there before you know it. Everybody has to have one, so you don't want to be it. Verse 8, "But the tongue can no man tame. It is an unruly evil, full of deadly poison." Be careful with it. And tear it down. Review how much tearing down you do. And start considering using your overly wagging tongue to build people up. That which could be a dangerous, deadly poison. It is. It's amazing. Poison, most of the times poison is just something you take too much of. And lots of times they find that in proper dosing, it's actually medicinal. It might help. Yeah, you've got a sharp-witted tongue. Maybe you could use that for some good and to build people up. Find value instead of find fault. Point number 2. It's a powerful tool for good. Point number 1, it's a powerful tool for bad, but it's a powerful tool for good. That's why you don't cut the rudder off the ship, because the rudder is very useful. If it's used properly, and if somebody knows how to use it, it can build others up. Ephesians 4:29. I can turn there if you want. I just happen to turn right to it. "Let no corrupt communication proceed out of your mouth, but that which is good to the use of edifying, that it may minister grace unto the hearers." My wife's a wonderful cook. Wonderful, wonderful cook. And I learned, when I was early in our marriage, she'd cook something, and it'd be great. But I could tell her how it would be better. And that didn't go over well early in a marriage. And I didn't mean it in a bad way. And after a while, I learned how to do it a little bit better, and she now asks me, what did you think of this new recipe? And so one is edifying, and the other is criticism, and your tongue can edify. And I'd like to think that my wife is a better cook than she was when we were first married. She tries some recipes and we say, that deer and spinach casserole, that's a no-go. Ask me about the deer and spinach casserole. That's a no-go. But, you improve things, and now you have a palate. What do we enjoy more? Take a little bit more garlic. Take a little bit less pepper, and a lot less salt. And no sugar, right, Karen? And you have a palate, and you refine to how your family likes to eat, right? And that's edifying. That's out of love. That's to improve. That's better. But it comes from your heart that you honestly is working to a greater good. There's too many people they don't like. They tear down. They find fault in. Constantly. I'd like to think I've never just done that to my wife's cooking, but there's a way to do it and a way not to do it. You can build up. Proverbs 15:4. I'll turn there. Proverbs 15:4. Proverbs actually is full of godly wisdom. A wholesome tongue is a tree of life, but perverseness therein is a breach in the spirit. You could really make or break I say you can make or break yourself with your tongue. Do you understand you can make or break people with what you say to them? I wish I could instill into young couples, especially the women, on the value of what they say to their husband. You will crush him if you say the wrong thing. I know, I just made a comment about talking about my wife's cooking when but you have to understand, men are way more vulnerable than you ever understand or they would ever admit to. And when they feel like their wife doesn't respect them, especially when it comes out in their language, it's devastating. It goes both ways. You can build up or you can tear down. You can make or break yourself, but you can make or break other people. Try giving a real compliment. You've got a salesman type that they always come in and they know have to accentuate the positive and downplay the negative, and they do it scientifically. No, how about you actually love people and you actually find value in people? And give them a real compliment. And don't do it jokingly. I've had compliments that you don't know if they're compliments or not, And there's people that give compliments that say, that was a lovely meal, honey. Now that's a nice compliment. But then they add, for once, and it's a joke. No, you don't have to laugh. You can humble yourself enough to build somebody up. And yes, building other people up is a humbling experience. You did a good job on that. Surprised me. To take away from the compliment that they might have, to make it somehow funny and to let no, it's a serious thing. That was a wonderful, wonderful job you did. Period. Let them have that moment. Build them up. It's a very humbling exercise to truly build others up more than yourselves. Which kind of ties to the second point. Your tongue, powerful tool for each. So you have your tongue is a powerful tool. It's a powerful tool for evil. It's a powerful tool for good. It can build others up. It can stand against evil. It'd be nice if you actually use, here, kind of getting ahead of myself, because the next point is you can use your tongue to give the gospel. And that kind of ties into this one. People say, preach the gospel every day. If necessary, use words. I think that's a cop-out. I mean, that sounds clever. I mean, that's witty. But yeah, you got to use words. You know, obviously you need to use words. And they're going to say that people are going to get saved just by seeing that you live a moral life? No. If that was the way, then Mormons, they'd have more people in their church than we would, because the Mormons are way more moralistic than we are. I mean, they don't even drink coffee because it might be a drug. If you want to look at people who just legalistically have moral lives, it's the Mormons. Is their gospel better than ours? No. The gospel is Jesus Christ. And you need to inform people of that with words. Use your words. You know, with children. You know, there's some parents that come to me and say, my 4-year-old's not talking. And well, I say, you start asking, and you say, well, ask him something. And well, they've got an older sibling that just speaks for them. Well, if the older sibling's going to speak for them, why do they need to talk? And so what do you say? Well, you already know what they need, so you give it to them before they ask. And so here's what you do. Use your words. You know, and I'm telling Christians, use your words. Well, they know what the gospel is. They know my position on this. No, use your words. You can stand up against evil. You know, it'd be nice if you used your words to actually stand against evil. And that's going to take some discretion. I mean, you got some people out here that think gluten's evil. And that's their mission to make people stop eating gluten, or they're proselytizing people to be vegans. I don't think eating meat is evil. I think you need to make sure you have a good, firm idea of what is and isn't evil. You need to have a good grasp on it. But it is not, what the point is that some people almost think it's a sin to call out evil today. No, it is not. It is not a sin to call out evil. It's not a sin to end evil. We can go back and we can look at what Jesus did. He made him a whip. He turned tables. He kicked evil out of the temple. He used more than words. But chastising evil is not a sin. And you ought to do it. And I think sometimes we just console ourselves by choosing to believe that calling something out as evil is evil just because it's more comfortable to sit in silence and say nothing. Sometimes as Christians, you need to speak up for what's wrong. You need to speak up for what is right. Just in general. And not none of these single point issues. I mean, I know abortion is wrong, but that needs to be in the grand scheme of who you are as a Christian. It's hard for some people not to get so focused on one little thing, and they forget. I mean, they could be in a house that's on fire, and they're worried about this house plant getting watered. You know? Well, you need to look around just too and see there's a whole lot more evil going on than the fact that people's trying to eat plant-based meat. I don't know. Have a good grasp on what it is and then stand up for what's right. Carefully consider it, call it out. With discretion. Verses 9 through 12 of James 3. Therewith we bless God. How amazing is the tongue. You use it to bless God, even the Father. That is God the Father. And therewith curse we men. You ever been around those people? It's a classic illustration of coming to church and they just got done outside in the parking lot threatening to co-con the kids because they had their VeggieTale music too loud, you know. And then they're going to come in here and sing, you know. And there's some funny jokes made about it. And the mom turns around, she's up here praising God and really getting into it, turns around and sees one of the children doing something. She says, "I'm going to kill you when we get home." Oh, Jesus, you know, and that's exactly how we do. And you have words of hate, words of tearing down coming out of the same mouth as what you're praising God with. And the old saying, so you kiss your mama with that mouth? You know, that dirty mouth? You kiss your mama with that mouth? And I say, you praise God with that mouth? The destruction you did with your fellow believers yesterday, and then you want to come in here and worship? And by the way, I maintain the right to I, with the counsel of godly people and as the Holy Ghost leads, I maintain the right to kick anybody out of this worship service because we're here worshiping God. This is not a public event. And if you are going to distract from God by your conduct here or during the week, and if I think you're bringing sin and evil and Satan into the congregation, I have no choice but to invite you to get right with God before you come back here to worship Him. Your tongue can be used to build up good, tear down evil. How do you use your tongue? Matthew 12, 36 through 37. We're not running late. Turn over there and look at it. We don't have to hurry here. Matthew 12, 36 and 37. This is one sentiment that is repeated all throughout the Gospels by Christ. Matthew 12, 36 to 37. But I say unto you that every idle word that men shall speak, they shall give account thereof in the day of judgment. That is a scary, scary thought. For by thy words thou shalt be justified, and by thy words thou shalt be condemned. You can get into some depths of that. Great white throne, being the seat of Christ, blah, blah, blah. But I think the sentiment is there that God is keeping a score and understands what you're saying it, when you're saying it, to whom you're saying it, and why you're saying it. And you can come up with some theology to make yourself feel better about that. But I think the safest thing is to watch what you say, why you say it, how you say it, and when you say it. Matthew, just a page over, Matthew 15. Matthew 15, 18. But those things which proceed out of the mouth come forth from the heart, and they defile the man. From out of the heart proceed evil thoughts, murders, adulteries, fornications, thefts, false witness, blasphemies. These things which defile a man, but to eat with unwashed hand defileth not a man. That's a good way, a complicated way, but it says what is in your heart is going to show by what you say. And if you want your words to change, you say, I've got a problem with what I say, I do. It might not be easy, it might not be quick, but it's a heart issue. And so I guess you can actually talk about what you say. You know, there has to be something said, and I'd be remiss if I just didn't even think about your language. Not only building people up, but just what the words you're using. I know people who use a lot of cuss words, but they never say anything mean. But they're just dull-witted, and they have to use a lot of four-letter words to elaborate their communicate, to adequately communicate, I guess. Then again, I know people who never speak four-letter words. Then again, their talk is full of hate and bitterness and anger. And I just wonder which person is better. We just put a value on not saying the four-letter word, but we don't put a value on not tearing people down. And people, you could ask people about certain words, and they don't know if it's good to say or not, or why. Four-letter words are not bad because of how many letters they have. They're bad initially because of the hate and the spite that they convey with dark hearts. But you can hate without using cuss words. I mean, love is a 4-letter word. If you say, I'd love to kill that dude, that's not very nice. So yeah, but I love, sorry is a great word. And say, well, you tell Jimmy says, sisters, ugly. Jimmy, you tell her you're sorry. I'm sorry, you're ugly. So what's in your heart and why you're saying it, right? I'm sorry, you're ugly. That being said, though, as a society, colloquially speaking, that means universally, it's generally accepted that some words are not socially acceptable. And you take even the most pagan person out there, if they came into this church, they would respect me enough not to use certain words. Why? Because we as a society believe certain words are not good to use. I don't think you ought to be using them either, because society thinks they're bad. That's enough of a reason not to use them. If you're using words that you think that everybody in society thinks is bad, and you're willing to use them in spite of it, you have to be cautious about that. What do I mean by that? I can think, there's these hunters wanting to come, and they're kind of rough dudes, and they came to my house even yesterday, and they talked to me, and they know I pastor, and they know I have a nice family, and they know I'm going to church this morning, and they're coyote hunters. They drove 8 hours. 8 hours to get to my house to hunt coyotes. So we let them go, and they're thankful. And it's funny, I talked to them for about an hour. They just about let one slip. Oh, pull that one back, Why? Because they respect me enough not to use that language. Why? Because they think that's a naughty word. Because everybody in society thinks that's a naughty word. And if they see a Christian using something that everybody else knows is a naughty word, it's a poor testimony for you. Now, is using that word in and of itself a sin? No, not nearly as much as your willingness to do something that everybody out there knows is a sin. Now, they know it's a sin. You have to be careful that what you're portraying is a godliness. And I just encourage you that even your language, what you're saying and how you're saying it, the words you're using, is above reproach. Society has an understanding that certain words are naughty. They probably shouldn't be hearing me use them. Not especially not in a profane, ugly, vulgar way. I'm sure we all can use a refresher on making sure that we articulate our points through good words, not through putting emphasis on pejoratives and vulgarities. But my last point here today, most of all, our tongue, though it's it is a powerful tool that can bring life. I say you can build each other up. You can make or break somebody's heart, spirit. You know what? Our tongue is that which gives the gospel. And it is important that you actually give the gospel. I'm not telling you. I used to sit in churches, and the pastor, lots of times he'd come, and his last point would be, and you need to go out tomorrow and find somebody and give them the gospel. I'm not going to do that to you. You might be in a position that there's somebody you can go and give the gospel to. But here's what I will say. Here's my final point. That sometime, maybe tomorrow, maybe this week, maybe next month, maybe next year, but sometime there's going to be somebody in your path that is ready to hear the gospel. And you ought to be willing and ready and able and wanting to give that person the gospel. Can you do it? I'm not telling you that you have to go to, that you're some type of an inferior Christian if you haven't been to your boss and shoved the gospel down his throat. I'm not telling you that you have to go to all your coworkers and make them sign a pledge of commitment that you have given them the gospel. This is not a checking it off the list type of a deal. This is, are you willing to explain to somebody that their sin is going to send them to hell, and that the only way beyond that is a relationship with Jesus Christ. I'm going to say when that person crosses your path, be it today, tomorrow, next week, next year, are you capable? Do you want to? And are you willing to humble yourself enough? Because you feel like a fool, you feel weird, you feel inadequate, it takes practice. Will you give them the gospel? You are not less of a Christian if you've given the gospel to less people than I have, or Billy Graham has. That's not what defines you as a Christian. But here is the point I would make is, will you give an opportunity? Can you? You understand your salvation enough to articulate that to somebody else that might need it. And I encourage you to ponder that. That's the most powerful way you can use your tongue to glorify God. Let's pray. Precious Heavenly Father, I hope that my tongue honored you today and what I said. If I said something I shouldn't have, I pray that you correct that. Sorry for it. I pray that you would take these words and hide them in people's hearts, especially that we all might bring you glory more and better. In Jesus' name, amen.
Amen.
401. 401, the solid rock. All 4 verses.